So today I have my 2025 TBR. Like I said, I had it last year and I started reading the first few pages, but as you can tell, this book is full. I was actually not made to read this one in school. Okay guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I have my 2025 TBR as well as a little bit of a book haul that I wanted to show you. So if you're not already, be sure to subscribe to this channel, but also follow me on my book account. So I have my TikTok and my Instagram, all of which are in the bio. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with my 2025 TBR. So every year I make a TBR on my Notion page for my overall yearly Notion page. So I like to divide all my books in different categories. So fiction, classics, nonfiction, money, finance, and self-help. So we'll quickly go through some of the books that I have on my TBR. So the first book on my TBR is Cleopatra and Frankenstein. This book I've wanted to read for the last 2 years and I haven't gone around to it, mainly because it's been hardcover. And if you don't know, something about me is I actually don't like hardcover books. I just think they're so heavy for no reason, which is really funny because when I was younger I loved hardcover, but now it's a soft cover at my local bookstore, so I'm definitely gonna want to read that one. I'm not entirely sure what it's about, but just from a little description that I read online, it seems really good, so I want to read that one. The next book on my TBR is actually Heartstopper Volume 5, which was on my TBR for 2024, but I just didn't get around to reading it, which is so crazy. But I actually have it right here. Like I said, I had it last year as part of my TBR and I didn't get around to reading it, but I definitely really want to. I love the Heartstopper series, and I'm pretty sure Alice is coming out with Volume 6, so I gotta get started on reading Volume 5. So listen to those two books. Another book that I want to read as well is called This Is Going to Hurt, and I actually think this is a show, which is what made me want to read the book. But it's basically, from what I remember, it's about a first-year doctor and she in the UK, and so she's just kind of starting her career out and she has a really hard time and then ends up committing suicide, I believe. And so it kind of just talks about the challenges of being a new doctor, the challenges of having a toxic workplace, and just the hardships that doctors face in the NHS. So I really want to read that one because the show looks really good. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure if it's nonfiction or not, but I have it in the fiction section in my TBR. The next book in my list is Babel, and Babel is actually a book that I got as a haul and I got it as a Christmas gift. So this is Babel by R.F. Kuang, and I've heard amazing things about Babel, and I feel like I'd really like this one because I'm not a huge fantasy person, I realize, nor am I a huge romance person, but I do think this is really up my alley. I think it's gonna really have me thinking, which I think is kind of the type of books that I want to read this year. So I'm really excited to read this one. I also read R.F. Kuang's Yellowface, if you saw my last video, and I really liked it this year, so I'm excited to read Babel for sure. So the next book I want to read this year, it's Children of Vengeance and Virtue. This is the second book out of the Children of Blood and Bone series, and I actually read the first book oh my gosh, what, 4 years ago in 2019, and I really liked the book. And kind of a similar situation, but one thing about this book, it took a long time for the series, the sequel I should say, to come out. It finally came out I think 2 years ago, but like I said, similar to the other book, it was a hardcover and I really didn't want to spend the money on a hardcover book, but now it's a soft cover and it is at my local bookstore, so I definitely want to get into that one. I will say that one is a fantasy book, which is surprising because I'm not a huge fantasy person, I don't think, but I actually really liked that series, so I definitely want to get the second one for sure, and I'm putting it on my TBR for this year. I think it was on my TBR last year and I didn't get around to reading it, so definitely want to read it this year for sure. Another book I want to read this year is Before the Coffee Gets Cold, which I've seen a lot on TikTok and I've heard mixed reviews about it. I've heard some people say that it's really good, and I think I've heard some people say that they didn't really like it very much. I kind of want to see it for myself and just kind of get my own opinion on the book. Maybe we'll do a whole video on it, but I really want to read that one for sure. It's at my local bookstore, so I definitely want to get around to reading that one. So the next book I really want to read this year is House of Leaves, which, believe it or not, I actually do have, and I've started reading the first few pages, but this was on my TBR for 2024. I didn't get around to it because, as you can tell, this is a pretty big book, and it's a bit like weird and different, and it is going to be, I think, one of those books that you kind of have to read slowly. So I definitely am going to take my time with that one, but I really want to get through House of Leaves and just like kind of see what everyone's talking about, because I've heard some really great things about it and I want to be in the loop. Another book I really want to read this year is As Long as a Lemon Tree Grows. I forgot what this was about, but I'm pretty sure it's set in Palestine, or at least the main character is Palestinian, so I really want to read that. Or was it the author's Palestinian? I don't really remember. Either way, I really want to read that one. I think from what I remember, the synopsis sounded really cool, so definitely want to get around to that one this year. And then the last book I have for fiction as of now is Either Or, which is the sequel to The Idiot, which if you watched my last video, you know I really enjoyed The Idiot this year, so I'm really curious to see that there is a sequel. I actually didn't know there was a sequel until someone commented on my Instagram that there was, so I'm curious to see how the story ends slash I guess continues. So that's it for fiction for me. Okay, so the next category of books that I have are classics. So these are like the traditional classics like The Great Gatsby and those kind of books, as well as just general really popular classic books. So the first one that I have on the list is, in true fashion, is Pride and Prejudice, which I actually do have and I did start. I think I started this, why do I feel like I started this last year and I didn't end up finishing it? I don't know, but I started a little bit of it, but I really want to read this one because I've never read Pride and Prejudice. I think one thing that might help me with classics is to watch like a movie first, just to kind of have a general synopsis of what Pride and Prejudice is about, and then read the book. So I think that's what I'm gonna do. Not sure how long it's gonna take me to get through this, but Pride and Prejudice is definitely the first one. So the next classic that I have on this list is definitely ambitious, but it is Anna Katerina, and I have this beautiful copy that I got from, I think it was like HomeSense. So if you are looking for classic books and just books in general, definitely go to HomeSense and HomeGoods. They always have like really good covers. But as you can tell, this book is huge, and I heard that it's like a bit complex, so I don't really know, to be honest, if I'm gonna get to this one, but I want to try. We'll see. But I have that one. The next book on my classics that I have on my TBR is by Oscar Wilde, and it's The Picture of Dorian Gray. Again, I also heard a lot of really good things about this classic in particular. I heard it was like one of the best ones out there, so I definitely want to get to this one. I'm excited. It looks good, it looks interesting, so that is the next TBR. The next book on my TBR is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. This, again, beautiful cover. I think I also got this from HomeSense. It's just so cute and beautiful. Despite the fact that I'm not a huge fan of hardcover books, I do think having a classic and a hardcover is just hits different. But yeah, so this is Jane Eyre. I also heard a lot of good things about Jane Eyre. I don't know if I'm going to get through all of these, but I really want to, especially before I go off to grad school in September, because it's going to be kind of hard to transport this. But yeah, that's Jane Eyre. Another classic that I have on my list is, and I think really fitting for the time period, is 1984 by George Orwell. I actually got this one as well as the Oscar Wilde one for Christmas, and I really want to read this. I think it's really fitting for this kind of global time period, and I think it's just be really insightful. I was actually not made to read this one in school. That's why I also have a lot of classics on this list, because for some reason in my school it was just not a thing. Not as much as you would think, so I definitely want to read it in 1984. I also see a lot of people reference this book a lot, and I never really know what they're talking about, so I want to be in the loop. So that is 1984. Then another book that I have on my classics list I actually have started, and that is James Baldwin's Giovanni's Room. I've also got this for Christmas, and so far I really like it. I think chapter 3. I've posted it a little bit on my Instagram story on my book account, and I've had a few people reach out and been like they love this book. It's one of their faves, so I'm really excited to get through it. I've already tabbed a few things, so I'm really liking it. I'll give a review when I'm finished, but that is Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. The last book that I have on my TBR for classics is, not sure if I'm gonna get to it, is Odyssey. And the reason I put this on my TBR is because if you were on Twitter the last few days or weeks, I guess, there was a huge like back and forth about Odyssey. I think because there is a movie coming out with like a whole bunch of like really A-list actors, and people were talking about Odyssey. A lot of people didn't know what Odyssey was about. People were arguing that it's a classic that you should know. It's like it was a whole back and forth. And to be honest, I was not made to know about Odyssey. I did know it was a book, but I have never read it before. We were not made to read it in high school, so I have it on my list just because I really do want to like be informed. And who knows, by the time the movie comes out, I would have read it. Not sure I'm gonna get to it this year just because like there's a lot on here, but hopefully we'll see. And yeah, so that's Odyssey. Next, we're gonna move on to nonfiction. So the first book I have, again, also got it for Christmas as well, and that is Joanne Didion, The Year of Magical Thinking. I really want to read this one. Maybe I'll read it next, but I heard a lot of really great things about this, and I really want to dive into it, especially into the new year. I think it'll be really helpful. So that is A Year of Magical Thinking. Another book that I really want to read this year, it's titled A Gypsy in Auschwitz, and yeah, it's about a story of a family, as you can imagine, during the Holocaust. And I've seen this book on like my local bookstore's like table for many years, and so I really want to read it, give it a go. So hopefully I'll get to that one this year. Another book I really want to read this year is Under the Bridge. So this was a show that I actually ended up watching this year. The whole case takes place in Victoria in Canada, where I live, and it's about a girl named I think it's Ravina. I might be pronouncing her name wrong, but who gets killed by 4 or 5 girls. And so the show does a really good job of diving into her story and like what happened, but I really want to read the book because I feel like, I'm sure as most shows are missing details. So yeah, that was Under the Bridge. Another book I really want to read this year is 5 Days at Memorial. So this is about the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina and kind of the things that doctors and nurses were forced to do in hospitals and taking care of people and patients who were in hospitals post Hurricane Katrina. And there was a lot of really hard decisions that had to be made, especially around euthanasia and kind of like what it means to, like, they basically had to play God, and there was like a whole fallout. I think they actually ended up going to court for it, but anyways, I really want to read that one next once I've kind of gone through some of my book hauls, but I definitely want to get to that one. I think it's fascinating. Another book I really want to read this year is Monday's Not Coming. I think there's a true crime case based on it. If I have more info, I'll put it on the screen, but I actually ended up listening to a podcast from Sisters Who Kill a while ago, and they were kind of talking about the case, and it's fascinating. So I really want to read the book as it dives a little bit deeper. So yeah, 2 more books on my nonfiction list are autobiographies. I'm so excited for it. The first one is The House of My Mother, and this is by Sherry Frankie. So if you're don't know what that is, basically she is the daughter of Ruby Frankie, who was recently, I think the last 2 years, was arrested alongside her, not her partner, but I guess her partner, her co-conspirator for child abuse and neglect. And so let me go back. Ruby Frankie was a mommy vlogger. She was a family vlogger and had a family channel called 8 Passengers that I watched a little bit at the very beginning and then kind of stopped for my own personal reasons, which is crazy to think about because of what ended up happening. So she had a vlogging channel, and with her 6 kids, and one of the kids obviously is Sherry Frankie. So she is coming out with her own autobiography entitled, like I said, The House of My Mother, where I don't know how much she's going to dive into what happened. I know she's very vocal and very against family vlogging, so I'm sure she's going to go into the dynamics of how that worked and what was going on in her house and what was going on behind camera, behind closed doors. I am fascinated, so I'm really excited for that release. I think it's coming out as soon as January 15th, I want to say, so I'm sad. I cannot wait to dive into that. The next book that I have on my TBR is Matriarch, and that is by Miss Tina Knowles. If you don't know who Tina Knowles is, like, I don't know what to tell you, but she is Beyonce's mom, and so I'm sure she's gonna dive into what it was like raising Beyonce, raising Solange, and just being a mom of a legend, of 2 legends, I guess. So I'm really excited for that. I think it comes out in February or in the spring. 2 very different days, but I don't remember, but it looks so good, and the cover looks amazing. So that is all for nonfiction. There's a lot. Don't know if I'm gonna get to it, but hopefully. So I have the last 2 categories I have on my TBR is money and finance as well as self-help. Don't have too many books in either of these categories, but I have a few. So money books I have Get Good with Money and Money, a User's Guide. I have these on my TBR last year, as well as like I think a few years in a row, to be honest, and I don't really remember what it's about, but I think having a general finance knowledge is always good, especially being my, god, hate to say it, but late 20s now. I think it's really good to just kind of have a general idea of what to do with my finances. So I'm not sure if I'll get to them this year, but I think it would be good to get at least to one of them. The last book category, I should say, is self-help, and I have 4 books on here. The first one is Sapiens, which you've probably seen, probably heard people talk about a lot. Really want to dive into that one, see what it's about before people talk about it. The other one that I have is The Courage to Be Disliked. I've seen this a little bit on TikTok, not too much, but I just, based on the title, I think it's really important to dive into that topic, see what it's about. The last 2 are more like quote-unquote spiritual books. The first one is The 4 Agreements, which you've seen everywhere. I think everyone except for me has read that book, so I really want to read it and see what it's about. And the last one is Spirit Hacking, which I saw a little bit on Twitter, but I put this on my TBR a while ago, and to be quite frankly, I don't really remember what it's about, but from what I remember at the time, it was interesting. So anyways, that was just a quick little video of my TBR for 2025. Like I said in my last video where I did a 2024 book roundup, I just really want to make more book content because, like I said, reading is so important to me. It's such a huge part of my life and has been for such a long time, and I want to share it more. So like I said at the beginning, if you are not already, follow all of my book related stuff, my Instagram and my TikTok. I'm going to be posting a lot on there. I might even post like a little roundup of some of the books that I got if you didn't see. And yeah, so with all that being said, I will talk to you guys in my next video, and I'll see you guys later. Bye guys.